Good evening. My name is Charles Evans, and I am the author of the Coaching for Black Men books. Purpose of this short video is going to be to talk a little bit about what Coaching for Black Men is, and hopefully to explain some of the details that may not be as clear from reading the books or visiting the Facebook page, the Instagram page, and things like that. So this is probably something I should have done a long time ago, but promotion isn't one of my favorite things to do. I'm kind of a modest person, so putting myself in front of a camera and talking is not the most comfortable thing for me to do. So what I want to do is just cover a couple of quick elements so that people that are reading the books and hopefully enjoying the books kind of get an idea of what the purpose is and where I'm ultimately going with this. So first thing is just, what are the books? So maybe I would say for the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of just reading, studying, talking to people, doing like quasi interviews with people, talking about the ideas of masculinity, and particularly what masculinity looks like for Black men. And what's interesting is that in a lot of the research that I was doing, I found that there wasn't really a lot of conversation that was geared specifically towards Black masculinity. Usually masculinity is written about in very broad, universalizing terms, and a lot of the discussion around what masculinity should be like is either controlled by white men or by women of all races. And I saw that there was an opportunity to have a different kind of discussion about masculinity, and I wanted to make a contribution to that. And so that contribution is these books. And so each book is titled Coaching for Black Men, and then it's got a different focus for each book, and I'll talk about that in a second. And so first, the idea of coaching for Black men. So the way that it's written, if you see the covers, they'll say coaching with the number 4 and then Black men. Well, the 4 gets into 4 particular archetypes of Black men that I'm talking about. And when I'm writing these books for Black men, but also for people who love Black men, people who are in relationships with Black men, people who work with Black men, people who want to see positive outcomes for Black men. It's pretty a wide range. So I don't want people to think that if you're not a Black man, there's no reason for you to read these books, because that's not the case. I think it's valuable in a couple different ways, but the audience specifically that I'm writing to is Black men. And when I wrote the books, I wanted them to be, as I'm writing the books, I should say, I want them to be as easily accessible as possible to people, which is why I've been making them as electronic books. So, they're available on Amazon. You can type in Coaching for Black Men and you'll see them. There's 3 available. In fact, there's one that just came out yesterday. So I want them to be easily accessible. I felt like putting them out as electronic books would be easiest because, you just download it right to your phone or tablet and you can read it right on the spot. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. People are on their phones all the time. I'm sure that's not specific just to this area. But I see people all the time reading all kinds of things on their phones, on tablets, whether on the metro, whether they're walking, whether they're in a car, Uber, whatever the case may be. So I wanted people to be able to access the books that way. Next thing is I want them to be easily digestible. And so I wrote them to be very short and to the point. So I would almost, consider each book like its own sort of mixtape, building towards like a larger project. And so the first book, actually, I think the time that the Amazon analytics say that it takes about 30 minutes to read. I think the next one is about 45 minutes to read. The one that just came out is probably about an hour. The goal is not for them to increase in the length, but, I'm just writing however I'm moved to write on that subject. So if it's a lot of times the books are much longer, I end up shortening them down so that they're not overwhelming. But I want them to be fast reads so that a discussion can happen about what Black masculinity looks like in a very sort of concise way. And so my goal is that with these books, you understand what my perspective is. Maybe that helps to inform your perspective. Maybe it helps to give you something completely different to think about. Maybe it gives you something to debate about or something to completely disagree with. But I want to be a part of that discussion, and that's what the purpose of these books are, or one of the purpose of these books. So, if you checked out the first book or any of the ones that came after it, you'll notice that the 4 is actually talking about the 4 archetypes of Black masculinity. And so when we're talking about archetypes, the best way to describe an archetype is like an idea or a model that represents something. So usually in, if you look at mythology, you'll see like a lot of archetypal models of like a hero. So, even in movies today, you'll see a lot of ideas of like a hero archetype. So, if you're a Star Wars fan, like I am, Luke Skywalker would be like the idea of a hero and goes through, what's described as the hero's journey. Or if you're a fan of The Matrix, like as another example, say like a character like Morpheus. Morpheus would be like what's called like the magician archetype. So he's a representation of that. So archetype ideas have existed since people have existed, and they fill in a lot of the mythology that comes with different cultures and different races of people. And as you study these archetypes, you will see that there's a lot of overlap. So sometimes an archetype that you might find in Greek mythology could be very similar to an archetype that you would find in Egyptian mythology. So, you might see like those kind of same ideas be present because they're constantly informing each other. And then you'll see more modern day kind of archetypes like that exist now. So the reason why I wanted to use the archetypes is because archetypes have always been good to transfer ideas around certain characteristics that you would associate with people. And when looking at like the archetypes that I want to use for this book, I looked at a lot of the archetypes that existed. There's, dozens of them on the male and female side. On the male side, you'll have the king, thief, trickster, warrior, magicians, priests, all kinds of different archetypes. And I looked at those and I thought, a lot of those ideas were good. And actually a lot of what I've done is build on those. But I wanted to tailor those specifically to Black men and the Black male experience. And part of the reason for doing that is that, I think that as Black men, we have a very unique experience in terms of how we grow into and become men and how we get shaped and formed as men. For us, I would say like me as a person that's in America, although not explicitly for just Black people in America or Black men in America or people of African descent that are in America right now, the experience of slavery has had a huge impact on the ideas and the ways in which we present as men. And I think that that's a global phenomenon. And I wanted to really write and talk about, like how that kind of experience, the experience of slavery and colonialism, Jim Crow, just all the racism that Black men experience, even up to today's micro and super aggressions that you see Black men experience on a daily basis, how that impacts our ideas of what it means to be a man. And so to talk about these ideas of masculinity, I laid out a framework that consists of 4 archetypes for Black masculinity. And those 4 archetypes are the messenger, warrior, ruler, and mentor. And if you've read the first book, which is called Coaching for Black Men, Why Black Men Need Coaching, there's a quick overview of each one of those archetypes. And so I give kind of a quick list of what those archetypes look like when they are high functioning and low functioning. Now, high functioning is like what we become as men when we put in a lot of work towards self-development. It's when we really take an active role in defining ourselves in educating ourselves, and in, I think, really reaching out to other men around us to help us better inform who we are and who we want to be as men. The low functioning side is really what happens when we have our ideas and our behaviors dictated to us by an oppressive system, oppressive propaganda, which is constantly trying to marginalize who we are and what we can contribute to the world as men and as people. And so in book one, each archetype is explained, and it kind of goes through that information so that people can understand where I'm going with it. Now, after that, what I've done is write books that are specific to each archetype. So the next book, which came out, I think, right around the beginning of this year, January of 2019, is called Coaching for Black Men, Become the Messenger. And that one focuses a lot strictly on the messenger archetype. And I'll probably do a video that's just about the different archetypes, so that each one I can really talk about the ones in detail. Like I said, I don't want this to be a really long message. So the first one deals with that. And so if you've read that book, what you'll notice is that in addition to kind of explaining this archetypal model of the messenger, what I also do is use real world examples. And that's different from what you usually see with archetypes, because usually archetypal characters or archetypes, the characters that reflect those archetypes are also or tend to be imaginary as well. Well, not imaginary is not the best word, but imaginary. So like I was saying, if you look at Morpheus as an example of the magician, Morpheus in the Matrix is not a real person, right? So you can see Morpheus, you have an idea of what Morpheus is, and he's reflecting a certain archetype, but he's not a real person. When I wrote these books, I wanted to use real examples of people that I felt like did a good job of expressing these particular archetypes. So in the Messenger book, you'll see that there are quotes there from Martin Luther King Jr., Tupac Shakur, David Walker, Fela Kuti, Bob Marley. And so the reason why I did that was because I wanted these ideas of the archetypes to be real for people. I didn't want us to think about the messenger as being this almost unattainable goal that as men we're striving to reach. I wanted us to see that not only can we reach these ideas, but that other men have gone before us and done it successfully, and to use those as models for us to build on. And so in the first book that deals all with the messenger, I also make sure that that some reverence is being paid to those ancestors that came before us, and I think really laid down the groundwork for what masculinity can look like as represented by this particular archetype. The last book that came out actually Tuesday, which is March 26th of this year, is called Coaching for Black Men, Love the Warrior. And this one deals with the warrior archetype. And similar to the last one, there's references made to Black men who I feel like have embodied this warrior archetype. So you'll see information in there on Malcolm X, Robert Williams, Marcus Garvey, Muhammad Ali, Huey Newton. So I use these as reference points because I want us as men to not think that, these are like super ideas of what it means to be a man that are far away from us, because they're not. The same spirit, the same essence that makes those men has made all of us. And it's up to us to tap into that energy to shape our world the way that we want it to be. And in each book, I talk about what these archetypes look like in the worlds of the work that you're doing, in the relationships that you have, and in the community. And that's important because, our development as men isn't just for ourselves. It's not just for us to walk around and say, hey, I'm a man, check me out. It's actually for you to be able to contribute in some way to the world around you and to shape that world, through your own creative power. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it was important for me to talk about what the manifestation of these archetypes look like in work and in relationships and in the community. And the last part I'll just say about this with the idea of the archetypes is that, as people have read these books, I've gotten, feedback from folks, positive feedback. So thank you very much for everyone who's purchased the books, read them, and please, write those comments because that just helps with your Amazon analytics, just to be honest with you. But for people who have done that, I've had certain people talk about how they really feel like one particular archetype has resonated with them. So people said, yo, I really feel like I'm like a messenger, or I really feel like I'm a warrior. And that's what's up. I mean, I think that's good that you see yourself in these things and in these ideas. But my encouragement is always that the goal is for us to cultivate all four of these archetypes. So the idea of the almost like the superior black man, for lack of a better term, is a combination of all these archetypal models, and that as men, we are able to activate and utilize this particular mindset that each archetype comes with when it is most valuable for the situation is most appropriate. And that level of self-mastery is what I'm really pushing for and to develop through the course of these books. Now, obviously, at this point, there's only 2 of the archetype books are written. There'll be another 2 coming out shortly. And then people will have sort of like an idea of what this picture is like. Now, on the back end, the coaching part, why is it called Coaching for Black Men, is because one of the things that I am is a coach, or one of the things I do is coaching. And I've decided that I want to work explicitly and specifically with black men in coaching. And so I have some folks that I'm working with now. I'm really enjoying that experience of working with them. I think that they're enjoying that as well. But, that's ultimately where I want to get with this. The books are a tool for ultimately creating a model and a framework for working with black men. And I'm writing the book so that people understand what this framework is that I would be using to work with black men. I'm not saying it's the greatest of all frameworks. I'm not saying it's the last or the best, but I think it is a valuable one, and I think it can be very beneficial to the brothers that I work with, and I've seen it be very beneficial to the brothers I've worked with. I've also seen how just having the right kind of male interaction with the right type of brothers can be beneficial to people. It's been very beneficial to me to have the type of men in my life that I have that have really been helpful with helping me to formulate my ideas and to, watch me go through my trial and error process to get to this point where I am today. So that's a quick sort of overview of what Coaching for Black Men is. Once again, the books are available on Amazon through Kindle. You can download each book. It'll be in your Kindle account right away. The Kindle app is available for free on the on the iTunes or wherever you get your apps from. That's where you can get the Kindle app. And I think they're good reads. I think they're valuable reads. I definitely think you should check them out. They're available, once again, on Amazon. You can just type in Coaching for Black Men. You'll see all 3 of them. The first one has a yellow cover. Second one has a red color. The next one has a green color. I don't think the next one's gonna have a black color because I know people thinking red, black, and green. That's how it's gonna go. But we'll keep it interesting and see what happens next. There is also an Instagram page which is called Coaching for Black Men, where I use it to really highlight brothers that I think really embody some of these archetypes that I talked about earlier. There's also a Facebook page, which is also called Coaching for Black Men, where I, share some of the parts of the books, share different things in a more contemporary sense of just things that I see, conversations that are being had around masculinity, so that we as black men are able to see what's being said about black men, about masculinity in general, and then figure out what does that mean for us as black men. And this is the continuing part of that discussion, is even a video like this. So I think the next thing is, I'd like to do some more of these. I'll probably do one pretty soon talking about the messenger and the warrior and other ideas that I think are important to that discussion. So with that said, I'm going to bring this to a close. Thank you for taking the time to check this video out. Once again, my name is Charles Evans. I'm the author of the Coaching for Black Men books, of which there are 3. They're available on Amazon, and they're available for you to read on your phones and tablets. I will talk with you soon again, and thank you. Peace.